Good evening, airplane fans, and welcome to CAF Warbird Tube for this evening. Tonight, episode number 206, our friend Ross Sharp is joining us to tell the story of the other 100th. A lot of us know about the bloody 100th from the 8th Air Force. Well, this is the RAF 100 Group Bomber Support. We're going to talk about that tonight. A very secretive group, not a very well-known story, so I think you're going to want to stick around for that. But first, Ross, we gotta say congratulations. I mean, the Aviation Heritage of UK gave you their Lifetime Achievement Award. Congratulations on that.
Hello, Steve. Yeah, I was shocked. Shocked, I tell you. They called me out to the front, and an old friend of mine, Squadron Leader Martin Withers, was there in DFC. He got his DFC for flying a Black Buck mission in a Vulcan to the Falklands. And he held this out to me, and I had to make a speech. And for the first time in my professional life, I was lost for words, because this is the official body for aviation heritage, right, aircraft restoration and air shows in the UK. And I got this. Nuts. Anyway, it's hanging on the wall alongside me with lots of other nice things.
Well, you had mentioned earlier that you were wondering who they were talking about when they were making the presentation.
Yeah. They said this person has had a career. He was deputy air show coordinator for the Royal Air Force. He, has been involved in air shows. He's designed and opened an aircraft museum. He's worked for a national museum, and so on and so forth. He's been on staff at airports, and I'm thinking, who is this guy? And then the penny dropped. Oh, very embarrassing. But no, it was the Nissan hut. You can see that's an original World War II Nissan hut, which they've kept and refurbished. It's on the site of Royal Air Force, what was Royal Air Force Elvington, and it's now the Yorkshire Aviation Museum. It's a superb facility, and it contains, you'll see later, one of the only 3 Handley Page Halifax aircraft still left.
Hey everybody, welcome to CAF Warbird Tube, the show where we talk about World War II, aviation, history, and so much more. Warbird Tube is produced by the Commemorative Air Force, the world's largest flying museum. Our mission is to educate, inspire, and honor through flight and living history experiences. The CAF began the Warbird movement more than 65 years ago, and thanks to the support of individuals like you, we continue to grow strong. We hope you enjoyed this episode. And now our host, Steve Buss. Thanks for watching, and keep them flying.
Well, we're going to get into the story of the 100th Bomb Support Group in just a moment, but we want to say welcome to all of you who are here watching Warbird Tube. Glad to have you with us. If you enjoy what you see tonight, please don't forget to spread it across your favorite social media platforms. We do appreciate that. And of course, Warbird Tube is made possible by the Commemorative Air Force. To find out more about the CAF, our aircraft, many of which are out on tour right now, where the local units are, how you can be a part of that local unit, or just join the fun and become a CAF member, visit our website, commemorativeairforce.org. Now, as you're watching tonight and you're listening to Ross's stories, you might have some questions. Just type those in the chat box, and we'll try to answer them either during the presentation or before we sign off tonight. So with that, Ross, this is not a very well-known story. The Bomber Support Group from RAF, and you're going to kind of lift the veil of secrecy
as much as I can. Yeah, I've already told you a couple of things we can't discuss, but no, it's a highly secretive outfit that ran all kinds of different aircraft, many different types, in many different roles. And no less a person than Adolf Galland said that they were struggling towards the end just to stop these guys doing whatever they wanted over Germany. So the 100-year rule. Now, the 100-year rule is applied by the UK government to sensitive records, which it deems that it would not be in the public interest to have access to until 100 years after their official closure. The term of 100 years is only usually applied to those records which would affect state security or international relations. Some records of the actions of number 100 Bomber Support Group RAF will be restricted until 2045. By the way, you can see in, just off to the right there, excuse me 1 second, there I turn the fan off, the seal of 100 Group. It has the head of Medusa with the snakes biting away, and she's a gorgon, so she could turn everybody to stone. And the motto is confound and destroy. And they did just that. Next one, I think. Next slide. Okay, the man behind 100 Group is an intellectual giant. That's the best way of describing him. 100 Group had a short life, but a vital one. Air Vice Marshal Edward Addison, CB, CBE, FIE, that's a fellow of the Institute of Electrical Engineers, mentioned in dispatches. He got the Legion of Merit from the United States, the Royal Air Force. He served in both the Royal Flying Corps in World War I and the RAF in World War II. He held a master's degree from Cambridge and an engineering degree from l'École supérieure d'électricité in Paris. Sorry about that. I worked for a French firm. He commanded 80 Wing, which had fought the Luftwaffe directional beams during the Blitz. 80 Wing formed part of the new 100 Bomber Support Group when it was formed at West Raynham on the 3rd of December 1943. Addison became its first and only commanding officer from 43 through 45. Next, please. Okay, very disparate duties involved by this group. Main responsibility was radar countermeasures using jammers like Mandrel and Airborne Grosser. You'll be seeing some of these later. Signals intelligence, also via ground-based 80 Wing. They had German-speaking operatives listening in on Luftwaffe conversations and relaying the information they heard back in real time. Identifying radar patterns and wavelengths, sniffer sorties by various aircraft. I can tell you that one Vickers Wellington was fitted with recording equipment, hoping to be shot down or attacked by a Messerschmitt BF-110 or similar, and it made 18 sorties until it was actually shot up, but they managed to get the data back to the UK despite ditching it off the beach. And the young officer who did that got a Distinguished Service Order, a DSO, on the spot. So electronic jamming devices, e.g. the 2.5 kilowatt transmitter called Jostle, which was so big that it was only successfully carried by a B-17 or occasionally a B-24. Jamming of radio transmissions, i.e. tinsel. Tinsel was a noise jammer. All you did was locate a microphone in the engine bay of, say, a Lancaster, tune in your radio into a frequency that the Germans were operating on, and just flick the switch and flood it with the roar of a Merlin and just literally knock it out of the sky. So disruption of German fighter ops, German-speaking special operators, Operation Corona, along with special night fighter sorties. 100 Group activities depended on the strong support of the radio warfare establishment, the Central Signals Establishment, and the Bomber Support Development Unit. Next, please. Oh, by the way, that is an H2S radar that's been put back together. First steps. Air Vice Marshal Addison had experience with 80 Wing and their campaign to bend the beams of the Luftwaffe Pathfinders during the night blitz, and they unfortunately missed out on Coventry, which took a heck of a shellacking. So they used modified medical diathermisets. A diathermiset is used to heat cauterize things like warts or other imperfections. Early jamming efforts on the German Freya radar using a signal multiplier called Moonshine, which meant that one aircraft radiating could appear to be 10 aircraft on a German radar scope. and they used the Bolton-Paul Defiant as carrier aircraft. Also, by the way, you can see there the sole surviving Bolton-Paul Defiant in the world. That's in the RAF museum. It was a strange two-seat day and night fighter that had no forward firing armament. Slight flaw. Anyway, in 1943, before 100 Bomber Support Group was formed, Number 515 Squadron Defiance carried early Mandrel jammers during the Dieppe raid to jam Freya radar in the area. However, the Defiant was replaced by the Bristol Beaufighter before 515 became part of 100 Group. And I said that's the sole one there is. Early equipment. 100 Group as a new untried flying unit did not receive the best quality equipment. Both their Beaufighters and Mosquito NF2 night fighters were war-weary and came with early Mark IV AI radar. See the bow and arrow nose transmitting antenna on the nose of that bow. The RAF were reluctant to lose more advanced sets over enemy territory at this stage. Here is a typical Beaufighter Mark II with Merlin engines. Okay. First mission. On the 16th, 17th of December 1944, a main force raid of 483 Lancasters and 10 Mosquitoes bombed Berlin, with another 5 Mosquitoes dropping decoy fighter flares to the south of the city. 141 Squadron from 100 Group launched 2 Beaufighters and 2 Mosquitoes equipped with Serrate, which homed on the radar of German night fighters in support. The Mosquito, crewed by Squadron Leader Fred Lambert, DSO DFC mentioned in dispatches Croix de Guerre, yes, there's a chest full of medals for you, and Flying Officer K. Deere claimed 1 ME-110G as damaged. The damage to that Mosquito you can see, that's what happens when you get too close to an exploding BF-110. But you can see all the fabrics just stripped all off the tail. Next, please. First success. On another raid during the RAF's Battle of Berlin on the 23rd, 24th of November 1943, 100 Group launched 4 RCM sorties, as well as 3 Beaufighters on Serrate patrols. Sadly, one of the Beaufighters was lost, but a Ju-88 was destroyed by another of the Beaufighters. Serrate, which homed on enemy radar, allowed you to judge the direction of an enemy and whether you were high or low compared to the other aircraft, but not the distance to the target. You switched on your own radar when you got closer. Here you can see a section nose of a Beaufighter used on night fighter sorties. It is believed to be the only one in existence. The one thing that you will see is the AI has been removed from the front bulkhead. The rest of it is as is, and it's still in its night black finish. Next, please. The radar opposition. Würzburg Reis, left, which means giant Würzburg, and Freya, right. Germany at the start of World War II had sophisticated ground-based radar systems, a thing that was not known by the Allies. They soon found out. Early versions of Freya on the right were operational at the start of World War II, operating on a wavelength of 1.2 meters, and had a range of around 75 miles. With primitive phasing of the beam, it had a far better target resolution than the British chain home, which was used in the Battle of Britain, which was operating on a 12-meter wavelength. Usually it was paired with Würzburg Reis on the left of this photograph, which had a shorter range, circa 40 miles, but was excellent for gun laying and tracking aerial targets. Both of these were subject to jamming and spoofing by 100 Group. If you look closely, you will see that there were 2 figures in American uniform in that photograph. These radars were actually in Romania and it's thought that this photograph was taken after Romania had withdrawn from the German side and switched to the Allies in September 1944. Next up, please. Okay, Messerschmitt Bf 110G4, Royal Air Force Museum. This is one of the pride of the collection there. In this Bf 110G-4R6 was surrendered to the Royal Air Force at Grove Airfield in Denmark in 1945. Probably built in 1944 and fitted with Fug 220B Liechtenstein SN2 radar with its characteristic stag's horn antenna, it was the standard Luftwaffe night fighter for much of World War II. This aircraft had served with 1 NJGs-3 in the night defense of Denmark and northern Germany. This is one of the 5 Bf-110 aircraft flown to the UK post-war for test purposes. And as a matter of fact, the British test pilots rated it highly. An amazing coup. This Junkers Ju-88R1's crews defected to the UK on the 9th of May 1943. The crew of this Ju-88R1 decided to defect to Britain in May 1943. Well, 2 out of 3 did. The other one was kept at gunpoint until they landed in Dice near Aberdeen in Scotland. The RAF were ecstatic as the Ju-88 was fitted with the new Fug 202 Liechtenstein BC, which soon gave up its secrets. After being flown for evaluation purposes, it was eventually selected for preservation. It now forms part of the RAF Museum's collection, as you can see. Right, next one, please. 8.8 centimeter Flack and Searchlight. Along with its larger relatives, such as the 10.5 centimeter Flack 38, these weapons, when paired with the Würzburg-Freya radar combination, proved very dangerous to all Allied aircraft. Many were set out in flak fields around important targets or urban areas. These particular items are shown at one of the Battle for the Airfield events held at the American Heritage Museum, Hudson, Massachusetts. I used to live about 20 miles away and went to every one of these. Bases. 100 Bomber Support Group was concentrated on the East Anglian county of Norfolk, home to many 8th Air Force bases also. Bases included Fulsham, West Raynham, Little Snoring. I just love that. It's a great airfield as well, still active. Great Massingham, Sculthorpe, Alton, North Creek, another lovely name, and Swannington. You can see off to the side of the map, it says Great, that stands for Great Yarmouth. That's where the Royal Air Force bomber streams usually assembled, and the Germans could get easy early access to what was coming at them. 100 Bomber Support Group HQ eventually settled down at Beyler Hall. Yeah, it is actually pronounced Beyler in a lovely English language, about 14 miles northwest of Norwich. Okay. Varied equipment, and I'm not joking, it was incredibly varied. 23 Squadron, Mosquito FB6, 85, a former Battle of Britain unit that actually changed over to the Mosquito. 141 Squadron, Beaufighter 6, Mosquito NF2, FB6 and NF30. That's the last version of the Mosquito in wartime service. 157, all Mosquito unit, and 169, another all Mosquito unit. The Sterling 171 had a strange mix of Sterling and Halifax aircraft. 192 had a really big mix, Mosquitoes, Wellingtons and Halifaxes. 199, that's the unit that operated in conjunction with the 8th Air Force Special Duties unit, had Sterlings and Halifaxes. 214 that were based at Sculthorpe had the Fortress 2 and 3. You'll see the odd photograph of those coming up. And 223, a Liberator 6, Fortress, etc. 239, another mix of Mosquitoes, 462, the only Australian unit, and 515, the Mosquitoes. Again, please look at the photograph on the right-hand side. You will see that there's already a large H2S radome fitted where the chin turret should be. That work was carried out. This shot was probably taken in Prestwick in Scotland because Scottish Aviation had the contract to do that after they'd flown across the Atlantic. Also note the presence of the ball turret. That was removed as soon as it got to 223, 214. Right, yeah. Next, please.
Well, before we move on,
Uh-huh.
why did they have such varied equipment? I mean, was it because it was later in the war and they just had whatever was left over, or?
It's actually a very good question. Thanks for that. They had it because it depended on space. So if you've got something like a 17 or a 24, you've got masses of cubic to fill up. I mean, the Liberator, for example, had up to 30 different jamming sets inside it with 2 special operators. The reason they took the ball turret off the Fortress was to make even more space inside and lessen the weight for all the stuff they're carrying. The night fighters, they needed a good mix, as you'll see later, for various things. The early aircraft, like the bow fighters, they had because, like I said, they're war wearies. Air Vice Marshal Addison wanted whatever he could get at this stage to get the thing established. But yeah, it was horses for courses, Steve. Okay, you might like this. If you look at the Fortress behind the one in front, you'll see that the ball turret isn't there. That's because this is at RAF Sculthorpe, where the Fortresses were based, so they'd already started to deconvert it. Pilot Officer Budge is shown in the tail gunner's position in this Fortress 3. That would be the equivalent of 17G. The 4 rack-like aerials to either side of the Brownings are part of Airborne Grosser device. This was a 50-centimeter radar jammer specific to the early B/C and C1 versions of the German UHF Liechtenstein AI sets. Just below the guns, you can see a small black waveguide. This is the transmitter for the Moniker rearward-looking radar set, which was standard at the time, indeed even earlier, inside Bomber Command. It was designed to give warning of German night fighters coming at you. However, it was later removed from many aircraft as it was found that the Luftwaffe had devised a home-on-signal piece of equipment for it, the FUG 227. It is thought that 100 Squadron aircraft kept it going because they wanted the night fighters to come to them, because they had the equipment to jam the night fighters, and also they got guys like Pilot Officer Budge sitting there with twin 50s to welcome them. So this is a very interesting shot of a 17. I don't think many of your American viewers will have seen anything like that.
And Ken just asked a question. How exactly did the electronic warfare interfere with the radar back then? I mean, how were they jamming radar?
2 ways. You can either flood the frequency it's on with a signal that actually means that the radar operator is looking at a screen full of mush, right? Or you can actually tune that radar away from you by adding a signal on the side lobe, right? So it thinks you're off to his left, and really you're shooting at him from off to his right. Okay, so it's either jam or distortion. And some of these things were really sophisticated, you know, and you've got guys on the ground devising constantly newer and newer pieces of equipment, which is why you ended up with a Fortress that has 11 or even 12 people on board. And you'll see later what you had to do to a 24. Okay, now a horse designed by a committee is a camel. The unfortunate short Sterling. Here is a short Stirling of 199 Squadron 100 Group. The group had to take whatever it could get at the start of things. Short Brothers had to build the Stirling to a difficult specification issued by the Air Ministry. The RAF insisted on a wingspan of no more than 99 feet, when Shorts wanted 112 feet. The then standard RAF hangar door had 100 foot wide doors. The RAF altered the takeoff requirements as well, which meant that the wing incidence had to be 3.5 degrees, which gave lower speed, lower ceiling, and a ridiculously tall undercarriage, as you can see. Not only that, some person decided to put the main hydraulic distributor in the fuselage immediately behind the RAF roundel, which was a useful point of aim for a fighter. Also, there was, as an aside, other stupid requirements included the ability to be broken down into sections so it could be transported by 4 railroad cars, right? And the ability to take off if necessary from a 500-foot field using a catapult. So you probably gather that the poor Stirling, just didn't make it much. The Lancaster guys used to love it when they found out that the Stirling was on operations, because they knew that the Stirling at night was going to be 1,000 to 2,000 feet below them, and they were going to catch all the flak and all the night fighters. So if you survived a tour on Stirlings, you were a charmed man.
Oh my goodness.
Yeah. Right, I mentioned earlier, this is what you do to a B-24. Don't even think of touching Diamond Lil, okay? Promise? Don't you go anywhere near it. But this is what would have happened to her if she'd got to the Royal Air Force in the UK. This is a Liberator 6, as we called it, of 100 bomber support group. Some of this key, I've had to slightly shrink the photograph. A is a faired motor products nose turret. Didn't use it, just faired it, got rid of that aerodynamic gap at the end. B, you didn't need the Astrodome. You've got all the radar and radio equipment in the world inside this beast. Why would you be taking astro sights? So you took the Astrodome off to actually give a nice smooth surface and less drag. C, you had a Loran aerial for navigation down the side on the port side near the pilot's window. D, you had because you got rid of the Astrodome, you got practically no light inside the navigator's compartment, so you had to enlarge the window at the navigation station. That's D. E, you can't quite see that one. It was the Monica aerial. What Monica did, again, it gave rearward warning, and the 100 guys actually wanted the night fighters to come up and battle with them. F is a ventral gun mounting. So you took a single 0.5 and you cut a rectangular gap in the bottom of the fuselage and put it on a swivel. So you'd actually got some ventral protection at night. G, underneath the tailplane, is the Mandrel 3 antenna. That's the 3rd generation of the jammer that would actually flood the Freya radar. H, you plated over the turret well. Again, you've not got a ball turret. It's going to be lighter. You're going to need all that space inside for all the jammers. I is interesting. That is a Royal Air Force devised exhaust flame damper that they fitted on both the 24s and the 17s. Apparently it worked, quite efficient. J, fared over Emerson nose turret. Again, they want to eliminate drag, taking the 50s out of it, just left it where it was. And K is a whole raft of whip aerials for radio transmissions. So as I said, don't go anywhere near Diamond Lit, whatever you do.
Where did they make all these modifications? Was that
some were done by Scottish Aviation in Prestwick. Others, they had their own specialist people at maintenance units, because of course they had to have security clearance to fit all this stuff, right? So some of it was done in unit by the skilled mechanics. Yeah, so the whole of 100 group was shrouded in secrecy. It's an amazing history, and I'd heartily recommend a bit of study on it.
And I take it that they would also, I mean, all these modifications sort of stepped on each other. They built off each one as they
every time the Germans changed frequencies or introduced a new radar or something else, new radio setup, they had to build this in. As a matter of fact, there's a wonderful quote just down the line on here. You had crew members who said, of the special operators that were down the back of the fuselage, they said, I don't even know what these guys do, right? It was that tight. You got people, the aircraft itself was compartmented in security terms. Think about that. That's amazing. Okay. So, as I said, I didn't even know what they did. Fellow crewmen talking about onboard special operators. Sometimes special operators worked in a partitioned off section of the larger aircraft, such as the B-24, which could carry up to 30 jamming transmitters. They had to have good German. By the way, an awful lot of these people were either German or Austrian refugees or Jewish refugees. They could actually interact with German controllers on the ground and give contradicting information. And there's a classic case in point where one of the special operators in a 17 got this guy in such a tizzy he was swearing. So the special operator said, "Listen to the Englishman swear," in German. So yeah, they had the game going on. Tactics included inserting ABC equipped jamming aircraft. See that huge spike halfway along the fuselage? That stands for airborne cigar, and it's a massive piece of kit, like a cigar, only very large, and it's positioned inside the B-17 fuselage. It has two aerials, one shorter than the other, and it was vital, which is why we actually needed the 17s and we needed the 24s. The other one that carried it was the Lancaster, and we'll see that in a minute. So you inserted ABC jamming aircraft into the main bomber stream, and it accompanied it all the way to and from the target, as well as having one or two or even three of ABC aircraft orbiting the target area during the attack. Sometimes Mosquitoes had what they call pipe rack fitted to their Bombay, and their role was to orbit the target at 30,000 feet and jam all German radio communications over a large area for up to 40 minutes. Yeah, before the initial bombing and afterwards while the guys were clearing out. That was a very risky job. By December 44, the standard ECM fit, and there never really was a standard one because they were tuning it, become jostle, a carpet, and pipe rack jammers. All right, next one, please. Okay, these two next frames are very interesting. 101 Squadron Lancaster with ABC, again you can see the large aerials, over Duisburg, 14th of October at first light. Very rare to see the RAF out in 44 that deep into Germany. It was called Operation Hurricane, and they timed it to get there at first light. 101 Squadron, although it was a radio countermeasures unit, was not transferred to 100 Bomber Support Group on its formation in 43. 101 Squadron remained with No. 1 Group Bomber Command and continued to fly embedded in the main force bomber stream. This decision was likely due to Air Commodore Edward Rice, very opinionated gentleman, and No. 1 Group's commanding officer. Other 100 Bomber Support Group aircraft, including the B-17, were also equipped with airborne cigar. This and the following image give a clear shot of an ABC-equipped bomber aircraft in action. Next, please. That was taken a second later. They've got rid of the window to jam the radars. What you're now letting go, 1 by 4,000 pounds high capacity bomb. You can see that there, AKA the RAF slang for that is a cookie, right? You could later get an 8,000 or a 12,000 pound version of that by bolting 2 or 3 together. Plus 108 30-pound J-class incendiaries you can see coming from the rear of the Bombay. That Bombay is 22 foot long, by the way. Sierra Romeo Bravo, November Golf 128, was part of 1,013 strong aircraft raid in daylight up to a Duisburg target. 519 Lancasters, 474 Halifax, and 20 Mosquitoes. The cookie was designed to create a huge blast wave to break open structures, which the incendiaries would then set on fire. RAF fighters provided escort, but German radar predicted flak was still a major problem, hence the large amount of window dropped. 13 Lancasters and 1 Halifax were lost. 2 other RCM sorties were undertaken on that day. So these are good action shots. Honourable mention. We have to get to the Yanks, and here we go. It would be wrong not to mention the work of the 36th Bomber Squadron, 8th Air Force, in this field. Inspired by the efforts of 100 Group, the United States Army Air Force formed a small experimental unit, initially equipped with B-17F aircraft fitted with mandrel jammers. The United States Army Air Force called it the APT-3, which trained alongside 100 Group. Indeed, the B-17s usually operated in conjunction with Sterling's of 199 SD Squadron to provide mandrel screens. 4 B-17s with mandrel and carpet jammers, this isn't known, I think, operated off the D-Day beaches from 2235 to 0450 on D-Day. The unit later converted to the B-24. Here is the Beast of Bourbon, which unfortunately crashed on takeoff on the 19th of February 1945 with some fatalities, I'm sorry to say. Right, next slide. Outline of a raid. You can see a chalkboard erected here. This outline of a raid by the only 2 French heavy bomber squadrons in World War II, 346 Guyenne Squadron and 347 Tunisie Squadron from Royal Air Force Elvington near York, is typical of a late war daylight mission. The Halifax bombers would have been screened from German radar on approach to the enemy coast, usually by Sterling and Halifax units from 100 Group. A spoof group of around 8 of 100 Group aircraft would penetrate the screen slightly earlier at a different point to the main attack in order to attract fighters before they turned for home. Sometimes the main force would enter first before the spoof raid to confuse the Germans, who got used to the idea that they would be spoofed on the first penetration. The chalkboard is shown displayed at the Yorkshire Air Museum, Elvington, one of my favourites, by the way, alongside one of only 3 Halifax bombers left in the world. And note that according to the timings, that's a daylight raid. And it's on Leipzig. Leipzig had the largest rail station and marshalling yards in Europe. This is a rare Handley Page Halifax, Yorkshire Air Museum. As you can see, it has some resemblance to it's like a 24 and a 17 went on a date. Okay, because you have the twin tails of the 24, and you have the slimline nose of a 17 and the 4 engines. Although it's a live aircraft, engine runs are undertaken on rare occasions. This aircraft will never fly. It's a hybrid, being the rough equivalent of a Mark II and Mark III. That's because the wing came from one Mark and the fuselage from the other. The Halifax was a companion to the much better known Lancaster, and more versatile, by the way, and was flown by 171, 192 and 199 squadrons of the RAF and 462 Squadron Royal Australian Air Force, all in 100 bomber support group. By the way, look at the gentleman standing in front for the scale of this beast. It's not small. Next, please. Flight Lieutenant George Stewart, DFC, Royal Canadian Air Force 23 Squadron. I got on well with George. Flight Lieutenant George Stewart and his navigator, Paul Baudet, planned and executed a 2-aircraft daylight Ranger sortie over Denmark. Here you can see a superb painting of an attack he made on a Ju-88G night fighter on the Luftwaffe base at Grove, Denmark. George also strafed a Freya radar unit near the coast on their way back to Little Snoring. I had the privilege of talking with George. He lived in Hamilton, Ontario when I was based in Massachusetts. We lost him only a month or so ago. Great, great guy. There you can see the cannon hits. And there he is, Lieutenant George Stewart, DFC. George's navigator joined 23 Squadron when the unit was still in Malta, the first Mosquito Squadron to be posted outside the UK, and stayed with the unit for the rest of their war. 23 Squadron were recalled to RAF Little Snoring, Norfolk, and 100 Bomber Support Group, and undertook many intruder missions with their Mosquito FB6. George and Paul survived, and George became a test pilot with de Havilland, Canada, also instructing on the Mosquito with the Republic of China Air Force post-war. He reached more than 2,000 hours on Mosquitoes. He was very proud of that. Oh, and the photograph at the start of the presentation was of George and Paul's Mosquito immediately after they had landed off their very last and 50th mission. George dropped his bike to take the shot. Next, please. Okay, this is interesting because at the time I wouldn't have been allowed to go anywhere near this aircraft. A heavily modified Mosquito FB6 with ASV Mark 9 radar. You guys call it an ash pod. You saw them slung underneath Grumman Avengers and on other USN machines. You lost the 303 Brownings from the nose of the Mosquito, but you gained the ability to track targets down to as low as 100 foot above ground level, which was ideal for attacks on German airfields at night. The only problem was the slow radar scan rate. This was due to the radar being a maritime design. However, a good radar operator could cope with this. Plus, you still retain the FB6's internal bomb bay, which was good for up to 2 500-pound bombs. So it became a real game changer towards the end of the war. Next, please. Okay. There we are. 23 Squadron with ASH radar-equipped Mosquito FB6. You can see that's one after George and Paul had been posted out after they'd become tour expired, because neither of them are on the photograph. And you can see the thimbles type nose in front of the Mosquito. So it enabled really low-level combats to take place over and around Luftwaffe airfields and fighter beacons. It induced what became known in the Luftwaffe as Mosquito panic. Among the Jagdflieger, if you wanted to stay alive, you needed to stay at treetop level. This was called Ritterkreuzhoch, or Knight's Cross height. If you wanted to live, you stayed low. Despite its success, very few wartime conversions of this type were made. It was all done by hand. And it was never incorporated on any of the FB6 production lines. As an aside, it became standard on the post-war naval versions of the Mosquito, the TR-33 and 37. Okay, next please. Right, the last bomber command raid of World War II. Tragedy for 100 Group right at the end. Main Force Bomber Command had not operated since 26th and 27th of April 1945, when suddenly on May the 2nd, The light night striking force with its Mosquitoes, which almost exclusively at this stage were carrying 4,000-pound cookies, though it could carry 400 or 500 pounders when needed, was tasked with attacking Kiel, where it was thought that German ships were massing, enabling German troops to flee to Norway to continue the war. A 100 group Mosquito from 169 was lost, making a napalm attack on a nearby Luftwaffe airfield at Jägel. They were called a Firebash raid, and the crew were both killed. Later, it is thought that 2 Halifax Mark III bombers on a window plus bombing mission from 199 Squadron collided over the target. All 16 men were lost. There you can see chalked on the side of that bomb something you actually can see: Kiel, May the 2nd, 1945, and all the Mosquito with its nose art and rows and rows and rows of mission symbols. Next, please. Here you can see a wonderful painting by Simon Mumford called The Last Raid. It's superb. It depicts the delivery over Kiel by Mosquito B Mark 16 of 608 Squadron of that 4,000-pound cookie shown in the previous slide. When exhibited, this won the de Havilland Aircraft Museum Award, and I'm not surprised. It's magnificent. As per the image, none of the crews taking part reported any flak over Kiel at all. You can see the glow from the fires, but there's nothing happening. The following morning, heavy firing was heard from warships in the harbour and from local flak positions. They fired off all their ammunition, after which Kiel was declared an open city. British and Canadian forces entered shortly thereafter. Next, please. Oh dear. Remembrance Sunday with veterans from 192 Squadron 100 Group at Fulsham, Norfolk, November 2024. 2 veterans of number 192 Bomber Support Squadron attended a gathering at Fulsham Village with families and friends of those who had served. Warrant Officer Roy Daines began as a wireless operator air gunner. That's the gentleman you can see standing up just, undertaking 30 missions on Wellingtons. After that, he became a radio instructor. Then he retrained to become a code and cipher officer. His experience in the service was wide, including seeing the ruins of Hiroshima shortly after VJ Day. Sadly, Roy passed away March 2025. He was 102. We are losing the greatest generation day by day, Russ, Steve, they really are. Okay, next slide, please. One of the things, a solemn duty I have on behalf of the People's Mosquito, is to attend veterans' funerals in the United Kingdom. Here you see the funeral of Flight Lieutenant Harry Reid, DFC, 169 Squadron 100 Group, RAF. Flight Lieutenant Harry Reid, DFC, flew Mosquitoes as part of 100 Bomber Support Group. He had 2 victories at night. Royal Air Force Marham, which is close by, sent a young flight lieutenant who was training on the F-35. As you can see him saluting the coffin as it goes in. I brought him up to speed on Harry's flying career afterwards, and we had a good time. As I said, that's the use of the Royal Air Force ensign I don't particularly enjoy seeing. Next, please. There's a memorial tablet to 100 Group in the Royal Air Force Alton Museum in Norfolk. This tablet lists the many tasks undertaken by the group and its 12 Royal Air Force squadrons, 1 Royal Australian Air Force squadron and 6 specialist flights. The squadron of the United States Army Air Forces also operated under the group's control for a period during '94, as is mentioned on the tablet. The group carried out its airborne role from nearby Norfolk airfields. As well as this, there's an excellent 100 group room in the City of Norwich Aviation Museum in the nearby city. And the motto was confound and destroy. Next, please. War crimes, lest we forget. On the 15th of March 1945, the crew of Boeing Fortress Mark II, that's an F, Hotel Bravo 779 of 214 Special Duty Squadron, with the exception of the pilot, parachuted from their burning aircraft. 9 were captured by members of the Volkssturm and Hitler Youth almost immediately. After a short period, 5 of these POWs were shot out of hand, against all the rules of war. Flying Officer Harold Frost, DFM, mentioned in dispatches, age 24. Flying Officer Gordon Hall, mentioned in dispatches, age 22. Flight Lieutenant Sidney Matthews, DFC, mentioned in dispatches, age 25. Flight Sergeant Edward Percival, DFM, mentioned in dispatches, age 30. And Flying Officer William Vinnell, DFM, mentioned in dispatches twice, age 40. Remember them. Right, just one last slide, I think. At the end of every good program on television and on YouTube, ladies and gentlemen, there is a commercial. Please remember that. Okay, if you're in the UK on Saturday the 21st, 2025, or know of others who are, then People's Mosquito is holding a very special event at the world-renowned International Bomber Command Center, beautiful museum in Lincoln, and we'd love to see you there. At the Vintage Tea Party, we will have one of our oldest friends and TPM ambassador, Flight Lieutenant Colin Bell, BEM, recently acquired from the King, believe it or not, to go with his DFC, who has just celebrated his 104th birthday. That's a current photograph of Colin. He's 104 going on 80. I wished I looked as good. He's an amazing person. Colin is one of the very last World War II Mosquito pilots, one of the very last pilots from Bomber Command. Tickets are available online at peoplesmosquito.org.uk/tickets. And we'll have a very nice singer called Lily La Scala, smoke and mirrors, swing dance band. There'll be vintage dancers. We're dedicating a stone on the ribbon of remembrance at the museum. That's TPM. There's nice afternoon tea. Please come along. By the way, even if you can't come, you can still support our work just by buying a ticket from that thing. Anyway, commercial over, I think, Steve. Over to you. Do we have any questions, by the way?
We've got a couple. First, something that struck me, and
yeah,
I knew the story of radar, the radar development in England during World War II, and how that a lot of that technology was secretly snuck out and sent to the United States for development. But I did not realize how sophisticated the German radar was going into World War II.
Yeah, believe it or not, the first clue we had of how sophisticated it was had nothing to do with aviation. When the intelligence guys back in London analysed the photographs of the scuttled German battleship, the Graf Spee, they saw that mattress-style array on the mast, and it was their nautical equivalent of the Freya. It was called Sea-Pact. And they suddenly realised, whoa, wait a minute, they're ahead of the game. And also the fact that the early Freya, you could actually tweak the side lobes and get better target resolution than you could with the British chain home. The one good thing was that Germans had great radar, but not too many of them. Whereas the British had surrounded the southeast coast and trailed all the way up with chain home, and then the low-level chain home low, and then they had some great GCI radar as well. So, yeah, the one thing that remained ahead of them, undoubtedly, was airborne radar, because we had centimetric radar. You mentioned the cavity magnetron that we sent over in the Tissard mission to the US, and an alma mater, not of mine, but many people, only about 20 miles away from where I lived, Massachusetts Institute of Technology got hold of that, got Westinghouse involved, and before you knew it, you had great centimetric radar in the US.
It was good. And looking at the amount of equipment and personnel that were on those aircraft, how did they generate enough electricity to run everything?
That was the problem.
Yes.
You actually had to take a lot out before you could, and have onboard generators and uprated ones being driven by the engines to actually get as much juice. I mean, 30 jamming transmitters inside a B-24.
Right.
Okay. The RAF loved the B-24 for 100 group use because you could pack so much into it. They actually floored over the Bombay so they could stack a couple of special operators in there and even more jamming equipment. So yeah, it's a complex story, but one of I hope that I've been able to bring some photographs to the audience that they might not have even have realized existed, like the airborne grocer next, bracketing those twin 50s at the back of the fortress. Yeah, it's a great thing. I've actually been to most of the museums that contain memorabilia and bits and pieces of 100 group equipment, but the whole thing was wound up in December 1945. And although Air Vice Marshal Addison went on to have a huge career post-war, I think it went underground rather than there's a story of one Halifax that suffered severe damage, and the pilot realized he couldn't get back to the UK, but he might just be able to make it to the Russian lines. And he did so. And once he got over the Russian lines, he ordered the crew out. He stuck with the plane and force landed it. He unfortunately was so badly affected by the cold, it had most of the nose of the aircraft off, that he couldn't set fire to the aircraft. So we know for a fact that the Russians inherited a set of jammers, circa 1945, just like they inherited a couple of B-29s in Siberia, and that which later resurfaced as the TFF-TU-4 post-war. Yeah, so yeah, it's a very interesting story, and I'd heartily recommend all of your viewers to get hold of a copy of this. It's my friend Colin's biography. It's called Bloody Terrified. That's his direct quote. Heck of a guy, heck of a guy. Last time I had lunch with him at the RAF club, I said, "What would you like, Colin?" He said, "Oh, I'll have a Dover Sole. I always have the Dover Sole." He turned to me and said, "Can I have a bottle of bubbles, i.e. champagne?" "Yes, of course, Colin." And halfway through the lunch, he said, "Can we have another bottle of bubbles?" Yeah. You'd love him. I had the great privilege of speaking at Royal Air Force Marham. I was his warm-up act.
Okay.
At their Mosquito Day celebration, and I went down like, I don't know, a lead balloon. But this guy, God, he's a star, really is.
Well, we talked just a minute or two ago about the fact that I didn't know that much about the Germans' development of radar in World War II, but were the Germans aware of what the British had already created?
Yeah, that we tried actually to put self-destruct small charges, about sort of twice the power of a 12-gauge shotgun, onto pieces of equipment like the magnetron, right? So that the radio operator, if they'd had time, that they could actually self-destruct these in flight if they knew the aircraft was going down. The Germans had, they knew that obviously from their radio and radar analysis. They knew that we were running centimetric radar. It wasn't exactly 10 centimeter radar, it was 9.1 centimeter wavelength. And they tried to develop their own version of that. But they had a lot of trouble. They finally managed to get one codenamed Neptune up in JU-8T8, and I think they were looking to get one into the 262 as well. But that was right at the very end. They did. By that time, we'd bombed most of their industry flat. It's as simple as that, and a lot of it had gone underground. So no, we were always ahead of them in the airborne side of things. And by the way, the P-61 Black Widow had excellent radar.
Mm-hmm.
You know, so they operated out of Yorkshire, the county where I am currently sitting. So yeah, good people.
Yes. We have something here from Terrence. It's not a question, but a comment. Absolutely outstanding presentation, Ross. Thanks so much for taking the time to put it together and to share it with all of us. And Terrence says, I sincerely hope you'll do more of them in the future. And I guess we can let him in on a little secret. You were already working on your next presentation for us.
Can we leak the title, do you think?
Go ahead.
Okay, this one, I've got an awful lot of interest in this one, and I think it's going to be popular. It's called Reginald Mitchell, right? The Rise of the Spitfire. Yeah. Reginald Mitchell had the incredibly dubious honor. At one stage, he had the fastest aircraft in the RAF inventory, the Spitfire, and he'd also designed the slowest, the Submarine Walrus biplane amphibian, which is about a third of the speed. Now, great designer, wonderful man, taken far too early, and hopefully your viewers are going to, it will be, since I went behind the scenes at the Battle of Britain Memorial flight earlier this year, it's going to be some great photographs from privately owned Spits and Royal Air Force aircraft and even Spitfires in America. So, and lots of Royal Air Force input. So, yeah, that's coming up next. We'll tease that one, Steve.
Okay. That's great. And so watch the events page on the Commemorative Air Force website. And when we get that one scheduled, make sure you sign up and be part of it.
Thanks a lot.
All right. And Ross, thank you again for spending time with us tonight. And I also want to recognize the fact that you are in England, and we've got a 5-hour, 6-hour time difference between the two. So it's almost the middle of the night for you.
It's 2 a.m.
But we do appreciate you staying up late, and
I'm used to living on East Coast time, as well as my American passport. Despite the accent, I am a citizen. Despite my my body clock insists that after nearly a quarter century on the East Coast, well, that's where it is, somewhere in the Mid-Atlantic.
There you go. Thanks again, Ross, and thank you for joining us tonight. As always, we'd love to hear your thoughts on tonight's episode or ideas you have for future topics. Feel free to drop us a line at media@cafhq.org. Again, if you liked what you saw tonight, please share it across your social media platforms. We appreciate it to get the word out to more people who enjoy the stories of World War II, and especially the 100th Bomber Support Group. Almost an unknown story, and we're happy that Ross could share it with us tonight. If you do subscribe on YouTube, make sure you click that bell icon. You'll get notifications when our new episodes are posted. Until next time, I'm Steve Buss. Thanks again for joining us. Wishing you blue skies and tailwinds. Till next time, for the Commemorative Air Force.